The Pentagon's most senior intelligence officers thought they knew exactly who Staff Sergeant Sofia Martinez was. For 18 months, she had been the invisible administrative specialist who processed their classified reports with methodical precision. With her stunning blonde hair pulled into a regulation bun and bright green eyes hidden behind standard-issue glasses, she looked more like a fashion model playing dress-up than a serious military professional. What they didn't know was that the beautiful woman they dismissed as just another Pentagon paper pusher was hiding a secret that would soon expose the most dangerous intelligence leak in military history, and her accidental revelation would prove that some of the deadliest operators hide in the most ordinary places. But this morning was different. As Sofia organized the morning briefing materials, her practiced eye caught something that made her blood run cold. Embedded within routine intelligence reports was a pattern that no administrative clerk should have been able to recognize, a systematic compromise of classified operations that threatened active military personnel worldwide. The beautiful filing specialist was about to discover that her 18-month undercover mission was only the beginning of a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of Pentagon command. Staff Sergeant Sofia "Ghost" Martinez moved through the Pentagon's E-ring corridors with the unremarkable efficiency of someone whose job was to be forgotten. At 27, she possessed the kind of natural beauty that should have made her memorable: platinum blonde hair that caught the fluorescent lighting, bright green eyes that seemed to miss nothing, and delicate features that suggested she belonged in a magazine rather than military intelligence. But Sofia had spent years perfecting the art of invisibility. Her uniform was always perfectly pressed but never exceptional. Her makeup was professional but forgettable. Her demeanor was competent but unremarkable. She had transformed herself into the kind of person senior officers looked through rather than at. The transformation hadn't been easy. 3 years ago, Sofia Martinez had been one of the most lethal operators in the United States military. As a member of the Army's 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, she had conducted classified missions in 12 different countries, earned a Silver Star for valor in Afghanistan, and developed a reputation among special operations personnel that bordered on legendary. Then Operation Desert Ghost had gone catastrophically wrong, and 12 of the finest operators in the American military had died in the mountains of Afghanistan. 12 operators whose mission had been compromised not by enemy intelligence but by someone inside the Pentagon who had sold their operational details for profit. Sofia was the only survivor, and she had spent the past 3 years methodically working her way back into the system that had betrayed her team. Her administrative specialist cover identity was perfect, so unremarkable that senior officers forgot she existed even while she processed their most sensitive intelligence reports. Martinez. Colonel Harrison Pierce called from his office doorway. His voice carried the casual authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance from support staff. "I need the morning intelligence summaries ready in 10 minutes, and make sure the formatting is consistent this time." "Already prepared, sir," Sofia replied, her voice carrying just the right note of administrative deference mixed with quiet competence. "On your desk with the supporting documentation cross-referenced by operational priority." Pierce paused, momentarily surprised by her efficiency, then nodded absently before disappearing back into his office. In his mind, Martinez was reliable but unremarkable, exactly what she needed him to think. But as Pierce's door closed, Sofia's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. For just a moment, the administrative specialist vanished, replaced by something else entirely. Her posture straightened to perfect military bearing. Her eyes sharpened with the kind of tactical awareness that came from years of combat operations, and her movements gained the fluid precision that spoke of training most people would never experience. Then, just as quickly, she slouched her shoulders slightly, adjusted her standard-issue glasses, and became invisible again. The Pentagon's Joint Intelligence Division operated with the clockwork precision of an organization that processed secrets for a living. Sofia's desk sat in the administrative bullpen, surrounded by other support staff who handled the endless paperwork that kept military intelligence functioning. To them, she was simply another competent but forgettable government employee. "How do you do it?" asked Corporal Jenny Walsh, the communications specialist who worked at the adjacent desk. Walsh was 23, fresh from technical training, and still impressed by the complexity of Pentagon operations. "You've been here 18 months, and I've never seen you make a mistake on any classified document. Some of these reports are so technical I can barely understand what they're talking about." Sofia looked up from her computer screen, where she had been processing an intelligence summary about terrorist movement patterns in eastern Afghanistan. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had personally conducted operations in the same region described in the report. operations that weren't mentioned in any official documentation. I just pay attention to detail," she replied with a self-deprecating smile that had taken months to perfect. It's all about pattern recognition once you understand the formatting and terminology. What Sophia didn't mention was that her pattern recognition came from years of analyzing similar intelligence reports from the operational side, the side where those patterns meant the difference between successful missions and dead operators. She could read tactical assessments with the expertise of someone who had lived the reality they described. "Still," Walsh persisted, "you catch stuff that even the analysts miss sometimes. Remember last month when you flagged that discrepancy in the Kabul intelligence summary? Lieutenant Morrison said it prevented a major operational security breach." Sophia's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She remembered that incident clearly. The intelligence summary had contained operational details that would have gotten a reconnaissance team killed if she hadn't recognized the security flaw. The beautiful irony was that her administrative cover allowed her to spot threats that the official intelligence analyst missed. "Just doing my job," Sophia said, returning her attention to her computer screen. Lieutenant Colonel Victoria Thorne approached their section, her expression serious and her stride purposeful. Thorne was one of the Pentagon's most respected intelligence officers, known for her analytical precision and her ability to identify threats others missed. At 42, she had built a career on being smarter than everyone around her, and she had the reputation to prove it. "Martinez," Thorne said, stopping beside Sophia's desk, "I need you to cross-reference these operational reports with communication intercepts from the past 6 months. Look for any irregularities in timing, content, or distribution patterns." As Thorne handed over the classified files, their eyes met briefly. Sophia caught something in the colonel's expression, a fleeting look of assessment that suggested Thorne saw more than she typically let on. It was the kind of look that made Sophia's operational instincts activate, a reminder that maintaining her cover required constant vigilance. "Of course, ma'am," Sophia replied, accepting the files with the appropriate level of administrative deference. "Should I flag anything specific or use general security protocols?" "Use your judgment," Thorne said, her tone carefully neutral but carrying an undertone that suggested she trusted Sophia's analytical capabilities more than a standard administrative specialist should warrant. "I've come to rely on your attention to detail." After Thorne departed, Walsh shook her head in amazement. "She really trusts you with the complex analytical stuff. Most administrators never get that level of responsibility, especially not with operational security assessments." "I guess I've proven reliable over the past 18 months, Sophia said, but internally, she felt a flutter of concern. Being noticed was dangerous, especially by someone as perceptive as Colonel Thorne. The best cover identities were the ones that made people look through you, not at you. But as Sophia began working through the operational reports Thorne had provided, her trained eye started identifying patterns that made her increasingly uneasy. The communication intercepts showed enemy forces with advanced knowledge of classified operations. Mission timelines had been systematically compromised. Safehouse locations had been exposed to hostile surveillance with timing that suggested inside information. Someone with access to highest-level intelligence was feeding operational information to enemy networks, and the pattern suggested it wasn't random espionage, it was systematic, coordinated, and profitable. The beautiful administrator who appeared to be simply processing routine paperwork was actually conducting the kind of counterintelligence analysis that would normally require a team of specialists with advanced clearances. But Sophia's background gave her unique insight into operational security. She knew exactly what kind of intelligence would be most valuable to enemy forces because she had been on the receiving end of such intelligence during her previous career. More importantly, she recognized the specific pattern of compromises because she had seen it before. 3 years ago, her own team had been betrayed by exactly this kind of systematic intelligence leak. "Martinez," Colonel Pierce's voice carried an edge of urgency as he emerged from his office, his expression grim and his normally perfect uniform showing signs of stress. "I need you to prepare an emergency briefing packet. Senior staff meeting in 20 minutes. "What's the focus, sir?" Sophia asked, though she already suspected the answer based on the patterns she had been analyzing. "Operational security breach. We've lost contact with 2 classified missions in the past 72 hours. Intelligence suggests our communication protocols may be systematically compromised." As Pierce spoke, Sophia felt the familiar surge of adrenaline she had once experienced in combat zones. Her Delta Force training had taught her to recognize the signs of systematic intelligence failure, and what she was seeing pointed to something far more dangerous than random security lapses or individual spy operations. "Sir," she said carefully, her voice maintaining the perfect tone of helpful administrative concern, "should I include the pattern analysis I've been working on for Colonel Thorne? I've noticed some concerning correlations in the reporting timelines and communication intercepts." Pierce paused, studying her with renewed attention. Something in her tone or phrasing had caught his interest in a way that made Sophia mentally curse her momentary lapse in cover discipline. Pattern analysis, Pierce repeated slowly. That's not typically part of your administrative responsibilities, Martinez. When did you develop expertise in counterintelligence assessment? Sophia felt her pulse quicken, but her expression remained perfectly controlled. I apologize if I overstepped, sir. I just noticed some irregularities while processing and cross-referencing the documents Colonel Thorne assigned. I thought the correlations might be relevant to the security concerns. Pierce's expression shifted from mild interest to sharp focus as he processed her words. Show me what you found. For the next 15 minutes, Sophia walked Pierce through her analysis, carefully presenting her findings in a way that suggested meticulous administrative attention to detail rather than specialized counterintelligence training. But as she spoke, highlighting communication patterns and operational compromises that painted a clear picture of systematic betrayal, she could see Pierce recognizing the sophistication of her assessment. This level of analysis, Pierce said slowly, his voice carrying a mixture of amazement and growing suspicion. This isn't clerical work, Martinez. This is counterintelligence analysis at a very high level. This is the kind of pattern recognition that requires years of operational experience and specialized training. I've always been detail-oriented, sir, Sophia replied, but she could feel her carefully constructed cover identity beginning to strain under Pierce's scrutiny. I just try to be thorough in my work. Pierce continued studying her analysis, his expression growing increasingly troubled as he absorbed the implications. Martinez, the patterns you've identified here, they represent intelligence breaches that our professional counterintelligence analysts missed. These correlations suggest systematic compromise at levels that threaten ongoing special operations worldwide. But this revelation would have to wait, because as Pierce spoke, his secure phone rang with the distinctive tone that indicated emergency priority communications. His face went white as he answered, and Sophia could hear enough of the conversation to understand that another special operations team had been compromised. Another Delta Force unit hit 18 hours ago, Pierce said grimly after ending the call, his voice carrying the weight of operational failure and lost lives. Enemy forces had advance warning of the operation. Complete tactical surprise was compromised. That was when Sophia's careful emotional control finally cracked. Sir, how many operators were lost? Sophia asked, her voice carrying an urgency and personal investment that surprised both of them. The question came from 18 months of suppressed rage and professional grief, not from administrative curiosity. Pierce noticed the change immediately, his analytical mind registering the shift in her tone, posture, and emotional engagement. That's classified information, Martinez. Why would an administrative specialist need? Because if it's the Kabul operation using Team 7 communication protocols, Alpha Team was utilizing procedures that were compromised 4 days ago, based on the pattern analysis I just showed you, Sophia interrupted, then immediately realized her catastrophic mistake. The silence that followed was deafening. How? Pierce asked very slowly, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Would an administrative specialist know about Alpha Team communication protocols, or about a Kabul operation that isn't mentioned in any of the classified documents you've been processing, or about Team 7 procedures that are compartmentalized above your security clearance level? Sophia felt 18 months of meticulous planning and careful cover construction beginning to unravel in real time, but before she could formulate a response that might salvage her operational security, her emergency pager, the one that wasn't supposed to exist in her administrative cover identity, began beeping with a code sequence that every Delta Force operator knew by heart. Pierce's eyes widened as he recognized the distinctive sound and frequency pattern. That's a Tier 1 emergency signal, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Only special operations personnel carry those communication devices. They're not even supposed to exist in the Pentagon. The moment Sophia had spent 18 months preparing for had arrived, but not in the controlled manner she had planned. But the emergency would have to wait, because as Sophia reached for her pager, Colonel Thorne appeared in the doorway with an expression that suggested she had been listening to their conversation. Behind her stood two individuals that Sophia recognized immediately, counterintelligence officers whose presence meant her cover was either being investigated. I think it's time we had that conversation, Staff Sergeant Martinez, Thorne said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that meant the administrative specialist charade was officially over. Your real conversation. Sir, Sophia said to Pierce, her voice steady despite the collapse of 18 months of careful planning. I need you to know that everything I'm about to tell you is classified at levels that exceed your current security clearance. Pierce's expression shifted from confusion to a mixture of wariness and intense curiosity. Martinez, who the hell are you really? Before Sophia could answer, the emergency pager beeped again, this time with a sequence that made her blood run cold. It was the code for cover blown. Extract immediately. Hostile forces active. I'm Staff Sergeant Sophia Martinez, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, she said, finally allowing her true military bearing to show completely. The transformation was remarkable. The administrative specialist vanished entirely, replaced by someone whose very presence radiated the controlled lethality that came from years of elite military training. That's impossible, Pierce breathed, his mind struggling to reconcile the unremarkable support staff member he had known with the elite operator standing before him.
Delta Force doesn't have female operators. Officially, we don't exist, Sophia agreed, her posture now reflecting perfect special operations bearing. Unofficially, there are 12 of us integrated into various units, and for the past 18 months, I've been conducting a deep cover counterintelligence operation to identify the systematic intelligence leak that's been compromising Delta Force operations worldwide. Pierce stared at her, trying to process the complete transformation of someone he thought he knew. The pattern analysis you showed me was based on 18 months of methodically accessing classified files while maintaining administrative cover, Sophia confirmed. The intelligence leak isn't random espionage, sir. It's systematic, coordinated, and it's coming from inside Pentagon leadership. Someone is selling operational intelligence to hostile networks, and American operators are dying for profit. Colonel Thorne stepped fully into the office and activated a signal scrambler that Sophia hadn't known existed. The fact that Thorne possessed such equipment immediately shifted Sophia's assessment of the entire situation. "I've been watching you for 8 months, Thorne said without preamble, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been conducting her own investigation. "Administrative specialists don't possess the kind of tactical awareness you've been displaying. They don't instinctively position themselves with clear sightlines to exits. They don't unconsciously scan for potential threats when entering new spaces." Sophia maintained her military bearing but remained silent, evaluating the tactical situation and trying to determine whether Thorne represented support or threat. "More importantly," Thorne continued, "they don't conduct counterintelligence analysis at a level that surpasses our professional intelligence staff. Your pattern recognition capabilities suggested either advanced training or enemy infiltration." Pierce looked between the two women, clearly struggling to process revelations that exceeded anything his career had prepared him for. "Colonel, are you saying you knew Martinez wasn't who she claimed to be?" "I suspected she was special operations," Thorne replied. "What I didn't know was whether she was conducting authorized operations or whether she represented a security threat." The quality of her analysis suggested capabilities that exceeded normal administrative training. The implication hung in the air like a loaded weapon. "Ma'am," Sophia said carefully, "my operational orders came directly from General Morrison at Fort Bragg through classified channels. My mission parameters were to identify and eliminate the intelligence leak that has been systematically compromising Delta Force operations worldwide."
"And what have you discovered?" Thorne asked. Sophia reached into her desk and withdrew a sealed folder that Pierce had never seen before. Despite sitting 10 feet from her desk for 18 months, the intelligence leak isn't accidental. It's not even simple espionage conducted by foreign agents. Someone inside Pentagon leadership is systematically feeding operational intelligence to hostile networks in exchange for strategic political advantages and financial compensation. She opened the folder, revealing a comprehensive dossier that represented 18 months of meticulous investigation, pattern analysis, and evidence collection. "The compromised operations aren't random targets," Sophia explained, her voice carrying the precision of a military briefing. "They're specifically chosen to benefit particular defense contractors, to justify specific budget allocations, and to advance certain political careers. American special operations personnel are dying to serve someone's financial and political interests." Pierce's face hardened as he reviewed the documentation, his expression shifting from confusion to growing anger. "This is treason at the highest levels of military leadership." "Yes, sir. And the perpetrator has been using my administrative position to monitor how close various investigations are getting to identifying them. They've been watching the watchers." Thorne's expression sharpened with professional interest. "Meaning they know your cover has been compromised?" "Ma'am, I believe they've known for several weeks that I represent a threat to their operation. The emergency signal I just received isn't from my operational handlers at Fort Bragg. It's a warning that hostile forces are moving to neutralize me." As if summoned by her words, the office door opened without the courtesy of a knock. General Patricia Hawkins entered, flanked by 2 military police officers whose equipment and bearings suggested they were prepared for significant resistance. "I'm sorry to interrupt this meeting," General Hawkins said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and a tone that carried barely concealed menace, "but I need to speak with Staff Sergeant Martinez immediately. There are some serious irregularities in her security clearance that require immediate attention and resolution." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as Sophia's combat-trained instincts fully activated. She assessed the tactical situation in milliseconds, 2 military police officers positioned to block primary and secondary exits, General Hawkins maintaining casual conversation while clearly prepared for violent resistance, and Colonel Thorne's body language suggesting she recognized the threat. "Of course, ma'am," Sophia replied, her voice maintaining the perfect tone of cooperative administrative staff despite her mental preparation for combat. "Should I bring any specific documentation or materials?" "Just yourself, Sergeant. This conversation won't take very long." But as General Hawkins spoke, Sophia caught a barely perceptible hand signal from Colonel Thorne, a gesture that meant hostile forces identified. Prepare for defensive action. General, Colonel Thorne interjected with diplomatic authority, perhaps we should handle any security concerns through proper counterintelligence channels. If there are questions about one of my administrative staff members, this is a Pentagon-level security matter, Colonel, Hawkins interrupted, her tone hardening significantly. Above your operational clearance level and outside your jurisdictional authority. That's when Sophia noticed something that made her blood run cold. One of the military police officers was carrying equipment she recognized from her special operations training, a tactical restraint kit, typically used for extraordinary rendition operations rather than standard military detention procedures. They weren't here to question her about security irregularities. They were here to make her disappear permanently. Ma'am, Sophia said, rising from her chair with the fluid grace that came from years of combat training, before we proceed with any security discussions, I think you should know that my counterintelligence investigation has already been transmitted to General Morrison at Fort Bragg, along with comprehensive evidence identifying the systematic intelligence leak we've been tracking for 18 months. General Hawkins's expression flickered almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression that confirmed Sophia's assessment of the situation. I'm not sure what you mean, Sergeant, Hawkins replied, but her voice had lost some of its casual authority. I mean the systematic compromise of Delta Force operations over the past 3 years, Sophia replied, allowing her true military bearing to show completely now. I mean the deliberate exposure of classified missions to benefit defense contractors who contribute to specific political campaigns. I mean the deaths of American Special Operations personnel to advance personal financial interests. The room fell completely silent as the implications of her words settled over everyone present. And I mean, Sophia continued, reaching slowly toward her equipment bag with practiced casualness, the evidence that identifies you as the primary source of those intelligence leaks, General Hawkins. General Hawkins's carefully maintained facade finally cracked completely. Sergeant Martinez, you're making extremely serious accusations without understanding the larger strategic picture or the political considerations involved. Am I? Sophia's hand moved to her equipment bag with the kind of controlled movement that suggested tactical preparation. Or am I understanding the strategic picture perfectly? General, Colonel Thorne said carefully, stepping slightly forward in a way that positioned her between Hawkins and Sophia. I believe we need to involve proper investigative channels and legal counsel before this situation escalates any further. This ends here and now, Hawkins said firmly, nodding to the military police officers who began advancing toward Sophia with professional caution. That's when Sophia's equipment bag tipped over in what appeared to be an accident but was actually a precisely calculated tactical movement. The contents spilled across the Pentagon office floor, creating what looked like administrative clumsiness but was actually a defensive positioning strategy. Among the scattered pens, folders, and routine office supplies, something metallic caught the fluorescent light, a distinctive military patch that made everyone in the room freeze in recognition. The Delta Force combat patch lay on the office floor like evidence at a crime scene, its distinctive design unmistakable to every military professional present. The patch represented the highest levels of military training, operational capability, and security clearance capabilities that no administrative specialist should possess. Colonel Pierce's mouth opened in shock as he processed the implications. Jesus Christ, Martinez, you really are Delta Force. But Sophia wasn't looking at Pierce or Thorne. Her eyes were locked on General Hawkins, whose expression had transformed from administrative authority to something approaching panic. The patch was supposed to be destroyed when you were declared killed in action, Hawkins said, her voice now carrying a deadly edge that revealed her true knowledge of classified operations. Along with all evidence of the operation, you were never supposed to survive, but the revelation that would change everything was yet to come, because as the military police officers hesitated in the face of Sophia's exposed identity, she made a decision that would expose 3 years of systematic betrayal. You set up my entire team, Sophia said, her voice carrying the kind of controlled lethality that made both military police officers step backward involuntarily. Operation Desert Ghost wasn't compromised by enemy intelligence or operational security failures. It was sabotage directly from Pentagon leadership. General Hawkins's composure finally shattered completely. You were supposed to die in Afghanistan with the rest of your unit, Sergeant. Your survival creates complications that threaten strategic national security interests. Whose national security interests? Sophia demanded, rising to her full height and allowing her complete Delta Force bearing to show. Or whose personal bank accounts? Sergeant, one of the military police officers said nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the rapidly evolving situation. We have orders to escort you for security questioning. Sophia looked at him with the kind of expression that had once made Taliban fighters abandon fortified positions. Officer, I strongly recommend you verify those orders with your actual chain of command before following instructions from someone who's about to be arrested for treason and the systematic murder of American military personnel,
"This is absolutely absurd," General Hawkins declared, but her voice had lost all semblance of authority. "I'm a general officer with 30 years of distinguished service. My word." "Your word," Colonel Thorne interrupted, holding up her own secure tablet with evidence that had been loading during the entire conversation, "is being systematically contradicted by 18 months of comprehensive evidence that Sergeant Martinez has been transmitting to proper counterintelligence authorities." She turned the tablet screen toward everyone present. "Evidence that's currently being reviewed by the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Senate Intelligence Committee." Sophia smiled with cold satisfaction that had been building for 3 years. "The beautiful thing about conducting deep cover operations for 18 months, General, is that I had plenty of time to build a completely ironclad legal case against you." She reached down and picked up her Delta Force patch, holding it up for everyone in the room to see clearly. This patch represents 12 elite operators who were declared killed in action during Operation Desert Ghost. Operators who died not because of enemy action or mission failure, but because someone in Pentagon leadership sold their detailed mission information to hostile forces in exchange for defense contract considerations and personal financial gain. Her voice carried 18 months of suppressed rage and professional grief. "I'm the only survivor of that betrayal, and I've spent every single day since then gathering evidence to prove that their deaths weren't operational casualties. They were murders committed for profit and political advancement." General Hawkins made one final desperate attempt to control the narrative.
6 months after the congressional hearings, Staff Sergeant Sophia Martinez stood in her new office at the Pentagon's Counterintelligence Division, reviewing files that would have been impossible to access during her administrative cover. The transformation from invisible clerk to recognized expert had opened doors throughout the intelligence community, but it had also revealed the true scope of corruption that extended far beyond General Hawkins's individual crimes. "Commander Martinez," came a voice from her doorway. Sophia looked up to see a young lieutenant she didn't recognize, his expression nervous but determined. "I'm Lieutenant David Chen from the 75th Ranger Regiment. I was told you might be able to help with a situation we've discovered." Sophia gestured for him to enter and close the door. "What kind of situation, Lieutenant?" "Ma'am, we've identified what appears to be another systematic intelligence leak, similar to what you exposed with General Hawkins. 3 of our operations in the past 2 months have been compromised, and the pattern suggests inside information." The familiar surge of operational focus returned immediately. "Show me what you have." For the next hour, Lieutenant Chen walked Sophia through intelligence reports that painted a disturbing picture. The corruption she had exposed hadn't been eliminated. It had simply shifted to different personnel and new methods. The defense contractors who had been paying General Hawkins had found other Pentagon officials willing to trade American lives for personal profit. "Lieutenant, this isn't just similar to the Hawkins case," Sophia said grimly. "This is the same network, using the same contacts, with the same financial motivations. We cut off one head, but the Hydra is still alive." She reached for her secure phone. "I need to brief Colonel Thorne immediately, and we'll need to activate a new deep cover operation." Chen's eyes widened. "Ma'am, are you suggesting another 18-month undercover mission?" Sophia looked at the files spread across her desk, each one representing American operators whose lives hung in the balance. "Lieutenant, the mission I completed was never about just General Hawkins. It was about protecting American warriors from the people who are supposed to support them." She stood and walked to her office window, looking out at the Pentagon courtyard where thousands of military personnel worked, most of them unaware of the corruption that operated in the shadows of their service. 3 years ago, I made a promise to 12 dead teammates that their sacrifice wouldn't be meaningless. 6 months ago, I thought I had fulfilled that promise. Today I realize that promise is ongoing." She turned back to Chen. "We're not just fighting enemy forces overseas, Lieutenant. We're fighting a domestic enemy that wears American uniforms and takes American salaries while selling American blood for personal profit." The secure phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. As she answered, her expression hardened further. "Another team compromised," she said after ending the call. "Special Forces unit in Syria. 4 operators missing. Enemy forces had detailed intelligence about their mission parameters." Lieutenant Chen's face went pale. "Ma'am, how do we fight an enemy that's inside our own command structure?" Sophia picked up her Delta Force patch from its frame, the same patch that had exposed General Hawkins. "The same way we've always fought, Lieutenant, with patience, precision, and the absolute commitment that no American operator gets left behind, not in combat and not by their own leadership." She looked at Chen with the kind of determination that had sustained her through 18 months of dangerous deception. "Call Colonel Thorne and tell her we need an emergency briefing. Tell her Operation Silent Justice Phase 2 is now active." As Chen departed, Sophia returned to her window, watching military personnel cross the courtyard below. Each one represented someone's child, someone's spouse, someone's parent, people who deserved leadership that would protect them rather than profit from their sacrifice. The beautiful filing clerk who had exposed General Hawkins was gone forever, but the mission she had started would continue until every corrupt official was identified and eliminated. Some promises, Sophia reflected, weren't meant to be completed, they were meant to be lived every single day. She opened a new classified folder and began planning the next phase of an operation that would continue until American warriors could trust that their own leadership valued their lives more than personal bank accounts. The war against domestic enemies wearing friendly uniforms had only just begun, and Staff Sergeant Sophia Martinez intended to win it, one corrupt official at a time, for as long as it took to restore honor to the system that was supposed to protect the protectors.